If he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States, why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What
God,
is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
That was Fox's Bret Baier clearly performing for an audience of one after Trump melted down over the prospect of a softball interview by Baier on Trump's home turf. And so, in order to appease the God King, Baier came in with guns blazing, offering Kamala what I think was clearly the toughest interview of the campaign, and one that she passed with flying colors. Now, so as not to bury the lead here, Baier tries to whitewash Donald Trump's comments by offering some tepid response he gives during an interview with Fox's Maria Bartiromo, but to Harris's point, that is not all that Donald Trump has been saying about the enemy from within. And the reason that she knows about this topic, like it's the back of her hand, is because she literally threw to his exact words during her rally just days ago.
And so after all these years, we know who Donald Trump is. He is someone who will stop at nothing to claim power for himself. And you don't have to take my word for it. I've said for a while now, watch his rallies. Listen to his words. He tells us who he is. And he tells us what he would do if he is elected president. So here tonight, I will show you one example of Donald Trump's worldview and intentions. Please roll the clip.
The worst people are the enemies from within.
The enemy from within. Those people are more dangerous, the enemy from within, than Russia and China.
These people should be put in jail the way they talk about our judges and our justices. Now, if you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
You heard his words coming from him. He's talking about the enemy within Pennsylvania. He's talking about the enemy within our country, Pennsylvania. He's talking about that he considers anyone who doesn't support him or who will not bend to his will an enemy of our country. It's a serious issue. He is saying that he would use the military to go after them. Think about this. And we know who he would target. And we know who he would target because he has attacked them before. Journalists whose stories he doesn't like. Election officials who refuse to cheat by filling extra votes and finding extra votes for him. Judges who insist on following the law instead of bending to his will. This is among the reasons I believe so strongly that a second Trump term would be a huge risk for America and dangerous.
So when Baer tries to claim that Trump is somehow not as bad as he seems on this issue, let's not kid ourselves. In fact, take a listen to the full response he gives to Bartiromo about the anti-democratic measures that he's willing to take against what he calls, again, the enemy from within.
We are going to end all sanctuary cities immediately. We're going to end them because they're really...
Is that an executive order you do that with?
I can do it with an executive order. I'll have to do it with an executive order. You can do it with the Aliens of 1798. We can do things in terms of moving people out. We can move them out of the sanctuary cities.
Now, I know that Donald Trump is incapable of getting through a complete sentence these days, but what he's trying to say is that he'll invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which allows the president to deport anyone who is in the country illegally and hails from a country with whom the U.S. is at war. It was the basis for imprisoning the Japanese in internment camps during World War II. In other words, not only would its use be fundamentally misguided and perverted in this instance, but Trump went back to one of the darkest periods in our history to find this legislation. I don't know which one is worse, but frankly, does it really matter? But I want to go back to something that Baer said just at the top of this question.
If he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States, why is that happening?
That despite how bad Trump is, half the country is still supporting him. Let's think for a moment about why that might be. Bret Baier of Fox News, the network that just paid $787 million for lying on Trump's behalf. I wonder why half of the country might not believe the reality surrounding Donald Trump's criminality and why they excuse his behavior, and whether it has something to do with the very network whose logo is right there in the bottom corner of this screen. Yeah, truly one of life's great mysteries. And to that point, I know that some of you are thinking, why validate this network with an appearance then? And the answer is simple. We can ignore Fox as much as we want to, but that doesn't mean it's going away. It is the most watched news network in the United States. If we refuse to engage with the folks tuning in, then we are ceding that ground to the bad faith actors who appear on their air and lie so freely. So if Kamala goes on air, worst case is that the people who already weren't supporting her still won't support her. But best case, some do. And let's be clear, she did well in what was clearly a hostile interview, meaning it's by no means out of the question that some folks take a second look at her as the result of this. And by the way, think about the broader implications of this interview. At the same time that Republicans are trying to claim that she's been MIA in the media, Kamala Harris has done Call Her Daddy, Howard Stern, All the Smoke, 60 Minutes, and now Bret Baier on Fox News. And Trump? Well, he canceled his 60 Minutes interview, he canceled his CNBC interview, he bailed on a second debate against Kamala Harris, but hey, at least he did a town hall with the toughest interviewer of all, Kristi Noem. So yeah, remind me, who's the one who's afraid to answer tough questions again? So look, I get what Bret Baier's goal was with this interview, but what he didn't take into account is that he is trying to defend the indefensible, and Harris put that on full display. Because while the gaslighting and obfuscations might work when there's no pushback, Kamala didn't seem very intent on letting him get off scot-free.